Hi, and welcome to my Wonderful Knitting Life YouTube channel. My name is Margaret, and this channel is mostly about knitting. Sometimes there's crochet and some sewing and other life updates. Welcome to those of you who are new subscribers, and welcome back to those of you who have been with me for a while. Recently, I put out a tutorial for my nephew, Alexander, and it was for the Musselburgh hat. And that seemed to bring a lot more traffic to my channel. So welcome to all of those people who have decided to support this channel by liking and subscribing. And if you are brand new today, please think about giving me a thumbs up and subscribing if you enjoy this content. Given that there's so many new subscribers today, I'm going to do a little introduction to myself since it has been probably a while since I have done that. I am a recently retired teacher. I taught in northern Quebec for a number of years. In fact, when I was in my late 20s, I taught on an Inuit community known as 𝐏𝐸𝐿, and I taught around the Ottawa area. But when my children were 12 and 10, we decided that we needed a little more adventure in our lives, and I went to teach for the Eastern Shores School Board, which took me to Quebec, and I spent 2 years on the Magdalen Islands and 10 years in Sidsel, Quebec. So that gave me a lot of new things in my life, and I am richer for those adventures. I am a single mother of 2 adult women who are in their 20s, and I am currently living in rural Ottawa, Canada, where I enjoy a lot of the outdoor activities that are in this area. Downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. In the summer, we kayak, we garden, so I feel very privileged to live here. But on to knitting. So I have, believe it or not, 7 finished objects. This is unheard of for me because I love to play with whips, and I often have around 20 of them ongoing at any given time. So I'm going to start with the one that I'm wearing, and I do have some notes here, so if you see me glancing down, I'm just checking some of the things I might not completely remember. So the first whip that I want to talk about today is an old whip. This one sat upstairs in my room for about a year. I knit this Ranunculus by Midori Hirose about a year ago, and I knit half of a sleeve when I was finished the body, and it was too tight. I had added extra stitches under the arm, which I really like to do to give the body a little bit more give and drape, and I had casted them off thinking that I wanted to get down to what the pattern was saying, but I did it too quickly and the sleeve was just a little too tight on the arm and I didn't like it. And the other thing I wasn't too happy about was how my short rows were looking at the front right here. Maybe because the gauge is so open in this sweater, they were just showing up a little bit more than I wanted them to. I knit this with Holst Supersoft and their Titicaca base. So I held it double with those 2 yarns. So it is very, very light and airy, and I have a black wool top on underneath today because even though the sun is out and we are at the high today, it is minus 18 Celsius. So I'm keeping really warm in all of my woolly wools. I made this much longer than I'm going on my tippy toes, than the pattern suggests because I am quite tall and I am not a fan of cropped sweaters. I don't find them very practical for Canadian winters, and given that I am a mature age, they don't suit my body very well. So I really chose to make this sweater because I was curious with how many people had made it. Why were people making 10 of these when there were so many other things out there to make? So I thought I'd try my hand at it and see what I thought of this project. So It's a very, very pretty sweater. I love all of the texture here. It's very, very fun to do. There's great tutorial support for those of you who may be a newer knitter. And I just gave it a shot. I did not do the provisional cast on. I did a regular long-tailed cast on, and I have made a tutorial of how I do my cast on. Seems to be a unique one to Northern England, where my grandmother lived when I was a kid. And she taught me this cast on, and I use it for almost everything because it's nice and stretchy. I'm thinking now about how many I casted on. There's a larger amount and there's a smaller amount to cast on, and I casted on the smaller amount because I didn't want a super large boat neck. I want it to be more of a around my neck sweater. Can't remember if that was 60. For some reason, that's ringing a bell for me, but it is in the pattern. And I made the second size, not the smallest size. So the problem that I had was the sleeve and the short rows sort of standing out. And I guess I had to give this a little bit of a holiday and put it away because I was a little frustrated, but I have been in a finishing mode. A friend of mine that I have an online knitting group with, we're kind of doing a Whip Wednesday and Finish It Friday way of starting the year because I do have an incredible amount of unfinished projects. This was one of them, and this was the first one I targeted to finish. So I ripped back the sleeve and I knitted them both, and I'm really, really happy with them. They're full-length sleeves. I'm not really into the 3/4 length sleeves. I find I get cold arms if I do that. So full-length sleeves, it's a great fit. I'm so happy with the drape. The short rows, they were bugging me. So what I ended up doing was taking the one of each strand, just like I had knitted this project with, and doing some duplicate stitches over the spots that I didn't like. And why I didn't think of this when I was first making it, I have no idea. It was such a simple fix. It made the sort of the little holes that were appearing here completely disappear. And I am now very, very happy with it. So you might be wondering what I ended up thinking about this project. Well, I really like it. The reason why I really like it is because I find this loose gauge and the drape really, really feminine. And I feel pretty when I wear it. So hats off to Midori Hirose, because I think she was really the first one to bring in this loose gauge idea for a sweater. And it is very forgiving. I think many body types would look very, very nice in this sweater. And given that so many people have made it, I guess people must be agreeing because it certainly has worked out well for me. Oh, and my earrings today. These earrings came from the Elmont Fiber Festival. My daughter gave them to me for my birthday back in November as a gift. She had bought them there. And I had admired them, and then she quietly bought them behind my back, which was really sweet of her. These I originally thought were crocheted when I looked at them. But in fact, they are something far more old-fashioned. This is tatting, and it's not something that I really know much about, but they are really stunning, and I just love handmade items, especially handmade items by women. I think that's something that when we're makers, we enjoy so much. So I wanted to wear those today to give them a little bit of joy and to share that with you. I might not be able to get the backing on while I'm recording. Okay, I'll just put that down for now. All right, so on with my other finished objects. So another whip that was haunting me was my Ainsling or Aisling. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this. Somebody did help me out with it a while ago. I believe it's Irish, and I don't have the correct pronunciation, but it is by Marie Wallin. And I knit this from a kit that I bought from her probably about 3-4 years ago out of her British Breeds yarns. It is an all over colorwork sweater, apart from the cuffs and the ribbing at the bottom and the neckline. Those are just one solid color. This sweater I completely knit, and I knit the yoke twice. This is a bottom-up sweater, which can be more challenging for fitting. I knit everything, and when I started knitting on the yoke, there were, and I knitted a large. That's usually my given size. When I got onto the yoke, it was double the size that you're seeing right now. And I knit up a ways, and I just knew that this was not going to fit me. The yoke was absolutely huge. So I ripped it back right to the armholes right here, or where they're split. And I rapidly decreased the stitches so that I was ending up knitting a small at the top. It was a little tricky. It's maybe not the perfect look in the middle. If you get really close, you can see all of the dramatic decreases that I did. However, not many people look at my knits that close. And you know what? I wasn't redoing this entire sweater. On Ravelry, a number of people have also mentioned that they've had a little bit of a difficulty with the yoke being very, very big. So I don't think I'm alone. Possibly it's my gauge, because Marie Wallin does have a very, very tight gauge when she makes her sweaters. But overall, it turned out okay. It's a little bit of a bump here, maybe a little bit wavy, but I wore this out this morning to walk the dogs, and it was warm. So it is definitely serving a purpose. So I really had just put it in the holiday corner or the timeout corner, and all I had left to do was to sew in the ends and to graft under the arms. Kind of ridiculous that I left it for so long, but I was kind of frustrated with it and I needed a break. So I picked it up and I finished it, and I am wearing it now. It's incredibly warm because it is double strand yarn because of the color work all over. So if you are in a warm country, this is probably not the knit for you, because the British Breeds is 100% wool and it is warm. It is also quite rustic. So if you are not a fan of a little bit of a scratchiness to the rustic yarn, you might not want to make it in the British Breeds. But it is a beautiful yarn and it smells really, really good, which I like. I love to smell rustic yarn. It has such a unique smell and I find it's a good smell. So that is my Ainsling by Marie Wallin, all finished, and I'm happy to say that I'm wearing it now. I also have 2 finished shawls. I'm not going to talk too much about them because I was almost finished both of them the last time I made a full episode. So I'll just recap very quickly. This is the Interflow shawl. And I found this on the Knit Picks website in these colors. And when I saw it, I decided I had to make it. These colors, I believe, are Pansy and Kiwi in their Stroll base, which is very, very beautiful, very, very soft. It is a sock yarn. And one thing that is in the pattern when you do these 2 wings is to add this little bit on the one side. It's not on both sides, this little bit right here. This is knit with mosaic knitting. And like I said, I have talked a lot about it. So I won't go into all of the details that I've already spoken of. But I will add that it is very, 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 very fast. It's super cute. It uses 2 skeins of yarn, and I have about 30 grams of each left over, which I will probably use for socks at a later date. But I probably, going back, I don't think I would add this into the project if I was to do it again. Not because I don't like it, but because when I wear it and I wrap it, I don't find that I necessarily really see that much. Of course, now it's going to show up because I'm turning it over, but honestly, I don't know that I would include it, because I think the really stunning part of this is what is wrapped around your neck when you make it. And the two colors coming down are super cute on their own. So that's the only thing that I would change if I was to remake this project. But really loved it. Gorgeous. A friend of mine has made it after I showed her mine, and she loved it. She thought it was a great knit, really fast. It's quite long, so you can wrap it around really well, which I also like, and kind of more scarf-like, which is my favorite kind of shawl. I'm not into the big schlanket kind of shawls. I find they don't really fit very well under a coat. And because I'm always wearing a lot of wool in the house or out, I don't find I need more. So I'm not really wearing shawls all the time around me, but I do like to show them off. And you can't say that us knitters can be blamed for that, because you put so much time into these projects, you really want to wear them and take them about town. So my next finished shawl is right behind me here, hanging on this glass cabinet, and I find it's really doing a good job of blocking out the ring light reflection that you guys unfortunately have seen back there a few times. This shawl back here is the Go-Go Dynamo by Stephen West, and this was the 2024 𝐿. I made this in a total of 5 weeks, which I'm really proud of, but it took me 6 weeks because I knit for 4 weeks and I took a week off to finish this guy. I was exhausted by just knitting on one thing. It is not my norm. I tend to rotate around my whips very much on a whim of what I feel like making. So to just work on one thing all the time was not my cup of tea. So the 1 week break really helped. I came back to it and I finished the final clue, which was this center right here, and it was a lot of fun. In fact, my favorite parts of this shawl was clue 1, which is this part that I'm showing you. It what was these semicircles, and then you did the wedges to fill in between, and the final clue, which was clue 4 right here. Those were my favorite parts. This also gave me a chance to do some brioche, and this was my very first time, other than a little 2-hour workshop I did about a year ago. It was my first time doing brioche, and this is 2-color brioche, which from what I understand is a lot easier than working with 1 color. And I can't remember which podcaster once said, don't call it brioche, just call it yarnovers, because that's really brioche in a nutshell. There's such a hype around it that it's so difficult to do. Very often people won't do it and they'll miss the fun of doing a project like this. Although Stephen West always gives an alternative to the brioche in his projects so that you don't have to do it if you don't want to. I did this with stash yarn. The only thing I purchased for it was the mohair, and I got that from Ravelry Yarns, and I picked that up at the Elmont Fiber Festival, I believe, and it worked really beautifully with this. When I first started it, I was really worried my colors weren't going to work, but I am delighted with the end product. So would I do an 𝐿 again in October? Absolutely. I am planning on joining the next 𝐿. Whether or not I will finish it in the time that Stephen West lays out for the 4 clues, which is the month of October, I really don't know. But I learned a lot, and the camaraderie was outstanding and so much fun to see everybody's color combinations. And what really astounded me were the people who were thinking outside the box, things I would never think of doing. introducing all different kinds of colors and variations that were not in the standard. So the hats off to those people. Like, seriously, amazing. I don't know, like, I think of myself as a pretty creative person, but those people, they knocked it out of the park. So I just learned a lot and enjoyed the camaraderie of the entire process. So I would recommend joining in. Lots of fun, and my first MCAL ever. So that was a new adventure for me. All right. My next two finished projects, I'm going to have to insert pictures of because I have already given them away as gifts. They are both hats, and the first one is the Musselburgh hat. This is the project that I made, and my nephew Alex, who has been an on and off basic knitter since he was about 8 years old, and he's now 19, he really wanted to try some real knitting for a change instead of just making scarves and dishcloths. So I decided to make him a video. He lives in Seattle in the United States, and I live in rural Ottawa of Canada. So there's absolutely no way I could sit beside him and help him through the project. So I recorded a video. I had an idea of simplifying the project so that things like the make ones wouldn't be so difficult, the cast on, how to measure the gauge, how to finish the project successfully would work for somebody who hadn't had that much knitting experience. And I made the video just kind of for fun to help him. And oh, my cat is here. Sorry for the table wiggling. And I mean, it was kind of hilarious setting this first video up because I didn't have an arm to record with. I was using very basic equipment, a selfie stick. I threaded it through the arm of my sewing machine and counterbalanced it with a hammer and a crowbar so that my camera would sit facing down, looking at the table. Like it was really special, not professional, but I recorded it. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there and see if it's helpful for someone else. And it turns out that for some reason, YouTube decided to start throwing it out there, and quite a few people have watched it. In fact, I think it's over 20,000 now, which has really astounded me. But it did encourage me to buy an arm for my camera and make 2 more videos to support Alex and anybody else who was interested making this project. So I made the Musselburgh by Ysolda Teague, and I gave it away to my oldest daughter. I'm going to have to put a picture of it in its unfinished state because I didn't even take a picture of it for Ravelry yet. I'll have to get one from her soon. My cat is back. So those of you who have been watching for a while know that Mimi always likes to sit next to me and has a hard time if she's not. So hopefully she won't wiggle the table too much. Will I make more Musselburghs? Absolutely. It's a fantastic hat. It is double layered at the top, and with the brim, it has 4 layers. So it's a fantastic warm hat if you live in a cold place. But if you want to see more, you can take a look at those videos. I won't talk too much more about it because I've already talked more than enough. I am going to make a few more. It's a great on-the-go project. Sorry about the cat. She's driving me crazy again. And I have probably 3 or 4 people who want me to make one. But I have some other things to do first. It's on the to-do list. All right. My second hat that I finished is called the August hat. And this is a free pattern on Ravelry. And in fact, there are 12 months of hats that are free. I will put all of the information in the notes below so that you can find those things and the name of the designer and the yarn, etc. So you can look no further. It'll all be there. So this pattern is on Ravelry. It's free. I fell in love with this pattern a long time ago, and my sister gifted me a year ago some worsted weight hand-spun alpaca yarn from an alpaca farm in her area of Seattle. And she jokingly said, "I'd like a hat with this." So I made her a hat, and this was the hat that I made, and she looks absolutely wonderful in it. It has Latvian braids around the brim, both at the start and at the end. And I have fallen in love with Latvian braids. They are gorgeous, and it sets out any project really, really well. It looks like a border when it's around the band of a hat. And I am going to make this, maybe not the hat. I think oh, Mimi, she's at it again. I think I'm going to make this just as a headband. I don't tend to wear hats a lot because they squish my hair, and I don't like that. And I tend to be pretty warm. I'm always moving outside, so I don't usually need the full warmth of a hat. So stay tuned. I will definitely be making a headband with this project and the same yarn, but in reverse to my sister's. My sister's has the background as the dark navy and the lighter grayish blue as the highlight. And this is a colorwork hat. It has a colorwork pattern for the band and then another pattern that's on the hat. And I have only just started making her a cowl to match. That I've kind of figured out on my own, and I'm just going to go and grab that. All right, so here's the pattern. And as you can see, there's one pattern here around the band and one at the top. And what I've done for the cowl is I'm using this kind of secondary pattern. And I have used like a pattern that I've made before for a cowl for about the stitch count, and then made sure that it was divisible by this repeated colorwork pattern. So this is the cowl that I'm making for her to match her hat. And this is a really simple repeat, very memorizable. So this is proving to be a lot of fun. So that's on the go. I have to get that finished sometime soon. I'd like to give it to her for her birthday and before winter is over, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, my final finished object. I've never had so many finished objects. This is really something for me. All right, so these are a pair of socks, and I used the pattern Let's Stay Home Socks by Nancy Wheeler. Nancy Wheeler also has a podcast called Knit Sit Happy if you're interested. And she makes wonderful sock patterns. I think this was a free sock pattern on Ravelry, if I remember correctly. I did 64 stitches on 2mm needles. That seems to fit me really well. It doesn't fall down, but I have to warn you, I have a very narrow foot. So if you're thinking of making something on 2mm and you have a wider foot and a pretty regular type gauge with your knitting, you might need to go a little bit further up. In this pattern, I did 2x2 rib for 20 rows, and then I just knit straight down and I did a heel flap and gusset with 3 stitches here in garter on both sides. I found that out by Nancy Wheeler, and it's really easy to pick up your stitches when you do that. And then I simply knit down to the toe, and I did Nancy Wheeler's rounded toe. However, I think she goes down to maybe 28 stitches, so 14 and 14, and does her Kitchener. But I go down to 16, which would be 8 and 8 on my 2 needles, and then do my Kitchener, because I find that just fits really well for me. So I'm really happy to have these done. The yarn is, let me see, this is Scrumptious Pearl in the Poolside colorway. And what I really liked about these socks was that I started at the exact same place, and I didn't have to count my rows that much because I just let the stripes do the counting for me. And they ended up being pretty much identical. And I'm not super matchy, but that really took away having to constantly count rows, and it just made it really easy. They fit fantastic, and I can't wait to wear them. But they do have a few ends to sew in, but I'm counting them as finished anyway. I'll do that one afternoon when the sun is out. We have some nice light, and then they'll be done. So those are my 7 finished projects, which blows me away. Never have I ever done that. So on to whips. After finishing this ranunculus and falling in love with this just really relaxed, drapey gauge, knit on big needles, I went looking for some more projects like that. And I came across a project called the Wilfreda. I did a little gauge swatch, a mini gauge swatch, with some yarn from my stash. This is Holst Supersoft in the Tiffany colorway, held with a yarn that I picked up a long time ago. It is called 𝐏𝐨𝐝𝐿𝐿, and it is merino, but it's also got some shiny, probably nylon type fibers in there. And I just really liked the way it looked. So I started it, and I really flew through this project really quickly. It is knit on 6mm needles, and the yoke is so much fun. It is a cable, but an absolutely beautiful, there we go, the lighting is much better. An absolutely beautiful, beautiful cable, and so much fun, and so quick, which is amazing. And it's got the drapiness again, which I was looking for. And I knit what I think is if I remember correctly, the medium in the yoke. And then I added enough stitches under the arm to change it into a large for the rest of the body that gave me more positive ease. I tend to like a yoke that is more form-fitting and then more positive ease in the body. And that seemed to work really great. And I have gone ahead and picked up the stitches on one of the sleeves, and I've just started knitting down. I have the other one to do, but the entire body is finished. There is a bit of a line in this project, as you can see, but I soaked the top and dried it, blocked it, dried it. I wanted to see how it fit before I finished the body. So when I soak the whole thing, the spinning oil and the extra ink should come out of the Holst, and they should meld well together. Although at the moment it looks a little bit like a fade, which is fine with me too. But a great project. I am looking in the future at more projects knit on this large gauge. So if you know of one, please let me know, because I am really enjoying this fast knit, beautiful drapey type sweater projects. So would love to hear from you if you've got an idea for me. All right, moving right along. So in my quest to finish whips, I have another whip that has been sitting on the back of my bedroom chair for a while. This is the Olivia jacket, and the designer of this beautiful jacket is Sidsel Hoivik. I bought this as a kit from her, and the yarn is Hillisvag Ask. And it is a beautiful, beautiful yarn. I think it's listed as a fingering, but to be honest with you, I find it to be more like a sport weight yarn, or at least a very heavy fingering. Oh my goodness, Mimi is back again. So I have done the entire sweater. I have done the button band. I have done all of the crochet around the edges. There are pockets with this project, so I have done those. I have started working on the embellishments, and you can see right here that there are sequins at the bottom, which are really beautiful. Sidsel does a lot of embellishments on her projects. So it is work intensive. Oh, we've got a yarn that's not threaded in. It is a bit work intensive when you're finished, but well worth the final product. And again, there's a lot of learning to be done with this. She does things that I have not done before. She does on the inside, she does like an interfacing for the steek. So this is steeked, but you knit an interfacing here to cover up your steek, which is really fantastic. So it's hidden and it helps the jacket sit really well. So you're probably wondering why I'm not done and why this maybe was sitting in the naughty corner. Well, the problem is that I made an extra large because the large dimensions seem to be too small for me. And it's fitting quite well, but the shoulder is too wide. It kind of is making me look like a football player, and I do have narrower shoulders. So I have unpicked one, and I have taken, I'm not sure if I put it here, or if Mimi moved it. Maybe Mimi moved it. I have taken my scissors to the jacket, and I have cut a piece off of the shoulder. I sewed it with my sewing machine so there wouldn't be anything running down. And what I'm doing now is I am pinning it, trying it on, pinning it, trying it on, and trying to get the best final look for the jacket, because when you adjust one thing, other things need adjusting. So it's a bit of a challenge. I've still got one that I haven't touched, and it might be that I need to touch both of them to get really the final way of the bodice looking, the underarms looking, but I am determined to finish this. It is a gorgeous jacket, and it is a shame for me just to leave it sitting. And with the cold weather we're having, this would be perfect. So that is the Olivia jacket by Sidsel Hoivik, and I will get it done. We'll see. When I podcast in 2 to 3 weeks, we'll see if I've finished it, and maybe I can get a photograph of it with me wearing it. All right, getting down to the final works in progress. My daughter gifted me a kit to make the Scout mini shawl for my birthday back in November. And I went ahead and I started knitting it. It has a white or a cream garter border, and this is knitted in the flat. It is intarsia knitting, and I was finding the border with carrying the yarns into the border that was not also knit flat, but knit in garter, to be really difficult. It just wasn't looking nice, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I decided, after thinking about it for quite a while, to knit it without the border. I'm going to do an applied border later on, whether or not it's a garter border or possibly an I-cord border. I'm really going to have to just wait and see how I feel when it's finished. But I wanted to share my progress with you so far. I have knit the first colorwork section, and now I'm right into the intarsia because I have got 2 different patterns going on here. So I'm having to do a little bit of wrapping as I come through the center, but that is proving to be very doable and not a problem. This will turn out to be more like a scarf type shawl, and I'm really excited to do it. I've decided that Saturday and Sunday are for Sarah's shawl. So I'm trying to knit on this solely on Saturdays and Sundays until I finish it. So we'll see how that goes, and maybe I'll be through to the next section when I podcast next. My very, very last WIP that I am working on is a pair of socks. I am knitting these Magic Loop, and these are the Winter Wonderland socks. These are colorwork socks, and there is the most fabulous little Christmassy type winter village in the colorwork. I will insert a picture so that you can see that in its full glory. I am making, oh, I'm gonna have to just pause for a second. Okay, back to these beautiful socks. I am using 64 stitches. I am following the pattern and doing a twisted 1x1 rib in the cuff. And the yarns that I'm using are the West Yorkshire Spinners in the Silent Night color, which is the way that the pattern was written, and Cascade Heritage. And I'm afraid I don't know this colorway. I think it's cream. It's not a pure white, but it is what I had in my stash. And I made a rule for 2025 that I wouldn't be buying yarn. And that lasted until January 8th. When I found this yarn in a yarn store in Gatineau, near to where my oldest daughter lives. And in order to make this pattern, I wanted to use the original yarn because it is so, so pretty. It has a little bit of glitter. I guess that would be stellina. And I just couldn't see making it in anything else. So by January 8th, my rule of buying nothing was out the window. I'm sure you guys can relate. So I will keep working on those and update you in my next episode. Really excited to do the color work on those. So that brings me to acquisitions. And I have been really lucky. My daughter gifted me this book that I had been borrowing over and over and over from my local library. It's called Only Yoking. And it is really set up an amazing way. I have talked about it before. It has 3 sections for recipes for sweaters knit in fingering, DK, and worsted. And there are about 4 sweaters in each section, and you're given either the color work charts or the charts and information for making a textured yoke. So, and the rest of the sweater is just knit given the basic recipe. So I'm really excited to get started on a project from this book. The one that really has caught my eye is this one. And Nikki from the Knitting with Cat Hair podcast also picked this one out. It's just so beautiful. This is knit with 2 strands of lace weight, but I will probably make that with just a strand of Supersoft that I already have in my stash. I'm really trying to go more in the direction of making DK weight sweaters. And there's a number in here that I will also be looking at. The fingering weight sweaters are fantastic. However, they're time intensive. And my other acquisition is really recent. This is the Making Memories book. And this is a book with a lot of knits for children 0 to 12 years old. I'm not expecting any grandchildren, so you don't need to get excited or give congratulations for that. But it is a book that I just love. And I do have a number of friends that are expecting babies. So I'm kind of in the mode of looking at making knits for children. Another sweater I want to make is the flax sweater, which I'm sure you've heard of that one. It's a fantastic one by Tin Can Knits, I believe. And it has the recipe for baby to very inclusive adult sizes. So that's another one that I'm thinking of. So this is becoming one of my longest videos. I usually do something like 25 to 30 minutes. And our internet here is slow. I got a new computer, so I'm hoping that's going to help with getting this up on YouTube. But if you have enjoyed this today, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you know of any other sweaters like the Ranunculus or the Wilfreda, please comment below because I'm definitely looking for that type of thing going forward. All right, wishing you all the best for 2025. Happy knitting and take care. Bye-bye, everybody.